Earth Day is April 22nd. Stay tuned at the end of the show to learn about the free science games and activities your students can play at Legends of Learning to learn about Earth Day. 5 ways to bring computational thinking and STEM together. Episode 290.
The 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with Vicki Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
Let's talk about bringing computational thinking and STEM together with Stephanie Zeiger. She works with science and coding at a school in Nashville, Tennessee. So, Stephanie, what is our first way to bring computational thinking and STEM together?
First, thanks for having me on your show. I was very excited to get contacted by you to talk about this because I'm super excited about it. And the first thing I want to say is that as teachers, you need to know that STEM and computational thinking are not exclusive. In fact, the way scientists and engineers approach problems is very similar to how a computer scientist thinks. For example, when we look at the engineering design process, first you're going to identify a problem. So you're going to do the research to know what your constraints and criteria are. And that's going to be something you do whether you're designing an airplane or an app. You might need to learn some concepts to understand the problem better, but it's very similar. When you go and you imagine and brainstorm to think of those solutions, you might need to break down the problem into more manageable parts before you can imagine how to even solve it. This is actually called decomposition in computational thinking. And next, you get to plan. And so just like an engineer or scientist and you're planning out your experiments or designs, you're going to design an algorithm when you are programming. So that's step-by-step way to solve the problem. And then last, when we get into the create, test, and then we redesign, you get to test your design and learn what's working, what general concept you figured out, and what needs to be modified. To redesign, you have to look for those patterns and analyze that data and figure out what's responsible for the result. And this is very similar to pattern recognition and abstraction, which we use in computational thinking. And then my favorite thing is when you're coding and you run that program and it doesn't work and you have to debug, you're actually going to have to be learning from failure. And we know as science teachers, that's definitely something you're doing in the science and engineering field.
Wow. So have we already gone through all 5 now?
We haven't.
Okay. So this is just
4.
Okay. So we've gone through 4. So let's back up for a second. So first of all, you said STEM and computational thinking are not exclusive. So some people think, okay, now we're going to do science. Now we're going to do engineering. Now we're going to do math. And then we're going to do coding. So you think all of them can kind of come together, right?
Right, definitely. I think if with the right project design that you can actually incorporate all of these together. And we've had some experience with that. And what we found is it tends to get the students more excited about what they're doing in the science class and also helps them really feel like they can change the world when it comes to using STEM and computers.
Okay, so give me one example of bringing these together, Stephanie.
So in one instance, one of my favorite projects we do has to do with an electricity unit in our 7th grade. And so we asked students to develop an interactive toy. They're hired by Mattel, which is just to get them excited, to design an interactive toy. And so students work as mechanical and electrical engineers to learn about circuits like series and parallel, current and voltage. And then they design a toy that's going to incorporate a push button, an LED, or a motor. And what we found was our students were like, oh, yay, my button works and the LED works. But they really want a more interactive toy that does a little bit more than light up or spin. And so we took the project to the next level and added in what's called physical computing. And so now our students are using Arduinos to actually light LEDs and patterns, spin a motor to a certain degree that they want so they get more control over the toy. Or actually just even play a song by changing the frequency of sound waves using a buzzer. And so the excitement of this project grew exponentially, and our students are even more excited when they finally get through that, trying things out, and really get a working toy that incorporates that Arduino.
Well, that's incredible. And what age are the kids?
This was in a 7th grade class.
Excellent. Okay, so you give us an example of how STEM and computational come together. And that's a fantastic example. And it's obvious that the kids have to do number 2, which is planning things out. And then number 3, which is testing and learning and figuring out how to modify. Now let's park for a second on number 4. Now here is a frustration that I see a lot of teachers, or I guess a misstep that a lot of us make, and I did it at first too. We feel like we have failed as a teacher if it doesn't work the first time. Do you agree or not?
Are you talking about if the student's project doesn't work the first time?
I'm saying that sometimes teachers tend to feel like a failure if the student project doesn't work the first time, but that's not really how we should feel, is it?
No, definitely not. Having been a scientist and engineer in my previous life before teaching, I have to say that there's more failure than success in these fields. And what you want is for a student to be like, okay, that didn't work. So let's see what went wrong. Let's step back and work through it and see how I can redesign and build a successful prototype. And so we really want to push the process, not the product. And so we want even at the end of the project, we want the students to really reflect on where they started and where they ended up, so that they can see where they've grown in their learning. And so as a teacher, we don't want it to work out perfectly because that's no fun. The fun part is when we actually teach our students how to persevere and problem solve when things don't work. And that's where debugging comes in with computational thinking, and where in science and engineering, it's just a natural part of those types of jobs.
Well, and I've seen teachers who've done things like, okay, design a building and I'm going to cause an earthquake to happen and see if you can keep it from falling down, or putting some stress on it so that it's an actual competition and it has to, I guess, hold up in some way.
Right. We do a bridge project with students in our classroom, and we intentionally make the bridge fail. We put on as much as we can till it breaks. And the reason we do that is we want them to go back and redesign and figure out how they can improve it. Because that's a very important part of the process. So I would encourage teachers to find ways for students to have projects that aren't always going to work out perfectly. And then help model to them how they problem solve and work through that because students tend to think failure is a bad word. And in my line of work, I actually think it's a great word.
So is that our 5th, to help model problem solve, or is it something else?
When you are modeling, so let's model. It's always fun. I would just give you an example for computational thinking. When students can realize how much STEM goes into computer-generated animations or games, they can use programming to design their own animation of a STEM concept, such as how to get to a rocket's velocity or angle of projection accurate so it can make it to the moon. I wanted to encourage teachers to use resources like code.org's CS Discoveries curriculum or MIT Scratch program that can be helpful to create a project that's going to allow your students to express their creativity while using programming and modeling to deepen their understanding of a concept. And we've applied this across several projects, including one that's been done in our history classes, where the students actually wrote code to model Greek mythology as they were learning about the gods and goddesses.
So, Stephanie, let's finish up with a short 30-second pitch on why these two things belong together, why computational thinking and STEM belong together.
So computational and STEM belong together because they're really going to complement each other in helping your students become more STEM knowledgeable. And so I want to encourage teachers, while you can see the benefits of computational thinking, you might be overwhelmed to know even where to start. So reach out to the Computer Science Teachers Association. Their membership is free. They have great resources, and just jump in. Step out of your comfort zone, be the student, and just try to program. And you'll be amazed at how much you grow in your learning and the new perspective you'll have about your students as they're learning STEM concepts.
And I totally agree, because I know when I first helped kids make video games in Scratch, it scared me. I know when I first helped kids make apps, it scared me. When we first got Arduinos, it scared me. It's kind of scary and nerve-wracking, but these are things you can do. So get out there and try and experiment and be a creator along with your students. Legends of Learning is sharing free games and Earth Day resources. Go to coolcatteacher.com/Earth to play the science games and activities for Earth Day. Legends of Learning has fun, engaging science games for grades 3 through 8, aligned with next generation science standards. Check out my review of their product on my blog this week and celebrate Earth Day with some exciting games at Legends of Learning. Just go to coolcatteacher.com/Earth.
Thank you for listening to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. You can download the show notes and see the archive at coolcatteacher.com/podcast. Never stop learning.